Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. I want you to transport yourself with me straight into the ancient, intensely humid jungles of Central America. We're going to unravel the slow, fascinating decline of a truly legendary civilization, the classic Maya. We constantly hear these dramatic stories of sudden, catastrophic endings in history, but what the actual archaeological record shows us here is something far more complex and, honestly, way more interesting. So we're going to break down the anatomy of this twilight, piece by piece.
Right off the bat, we're faced with this incredible mystery. When we picture the fall of a massive empire, we usually imagine a giant fire, right? Or some devastating single battle that just wipes a city right off the map. But the Maya cities weren't destroyed by an invading army's sword. They literally just faded into a long, quiet slumber beneath the towering roots of the ceiba trees. So how on earth does a civilization at the absolute zenith of its power just return to the forest? Well, let's find out.
To understand how they fell, we first have to see just how high they climbed. So let's jump into Section 1, the classic Maya peak.
Okay, I need you to completely throw out your modern image of these cities. When we see photos of Maya ruins today, we're looking at gray, weathered stone blending into the green jungle canopy. But back in 750 AD, these pyramids were quite literally man-made mountains coated in dazzling, brilliant white lime plaster. They would have physically shimmered under that intense tropical sun. This was a loud, vibrant, incredibly successful civilization built entirely around one crucial thing: the cultivation of corn.
And just to put the scale of this into perspective, we're talking about 60,000 people. That was the population of just one metropolis, the great city of Tikal at its absolute peak. Back in the 8th century, this was a massive, bustling urban center just completely packed with trade, art, and some seriously complex politics.
And the people living there weren't just exceptional builders, they were the intellectual heavyweights of the ancient world. We're talking master astronomers tracking the stars and planets with a level of precision that literally wouldn't be matched by anyone else on Earth for another 1,000 years. They took all that celestial data and translated it into a sacred calendar of breathtaking accuracy. And that wasn't just for show. It was absolutely vital, because their entire society's survival depended on predicting the agricultural cycles perfectly.
Which brings us perfectly to the very foundation of their society. Section 2, the Great Cosmic Bargain.
At the center of this incredibly delicate spiritual and economic contract was the Kul Ajah, the Holy Lord. It's so important to understand that this guy wasn't just a political ruler or a king like we typically think of one. He was a divine shaman. The people viewed him as the literal, physical conduit for the city's survival. High up on top of those brilliant white pyramids, in the flickering torchlight, he conducted these intense rituals that served as the bridge between the mortal citizens down below and the gods up above who controlled the rain.
It essentially boiled down to this fascinating three-step loop. Let's walk through it. Step 1. The people feed the king with tribute from their cornfields. Step 2. The king feeds the gods. And he did this by piercing his own flesh, often using a stingray spine, if you can imagine that, offering his sacred blood, because they believed the smoke of that ritual opened a direct portal to the divine. Finally, Step 3. The gods feed the earth by unleashing the seasonal rains. And here's the wild part. For 6 entire centuries, this transaction held up perfectly. Crops got watered, people got fed, kings stayed in power. The whole shebang worked.
But what happens when the gods stop holding up their end of the deal? Let's look at Section 3, the perfect environmental storm.
This is where we see a tragic, perfect storm, a massive natural disaster colliding head-on with human error. Scientists reading the Earth's natural archives, things like lake sediments and cave stalagmites, found out that right around this time, the entire region was plunged into a severe, century-long drought. The sky just stopped cooperating. But here's the kicker. The Maya inadvertently made this natural disaster exponentially worse. In this incredibly bitter twist of irony, to make all that brilliant white plaster for their grand pyramids, they had to burn limestone. And to fuel those incredibly hot kilns, they had already cut down thousands and thousands of acres of pristine moisture-retaining forest.
The fallout from that deforestation was just absolutely devastating. Because without those tree roots acting like an anchor for the soil, whenever those rare, intense tropical rains actually did fall, they just washed all the land's fertility right away into the swamps. You can only imagine the sheer panic in these cities. Those massive stone reservoirs evaporated into these vast plains of dry, cracked mud. Season after season, the corn just withered and died. The kings are up there performing more and more desperate bloodletting rituals, but nothing happens. The rains do not come.
That great cosmic bargain was broken, and a massive crisis of faith started to fracture the entire society.
And that broken trust leads us right into Section 4. The cities fall silent.
With the crops dying and the water literally vanishing, the entire psychological vibe of the landscape flipped almost overnight. These open, highly confident cities rapidly devolved into landscapes of pure fear. You see, warfare in the Maya world used to be highly ritualized. It was mostly about capturing rival nobles for sacrifice or a hefty ransom. But as this drought deepened, the archaeology shows us that it spiraled into brutal, desperate survival of the fittest struggles, just to control whatever tiny water sources were left. We actually see physical proof of this panic in the form of crude, hastily built barricades thrown up right in the middle of central palaces. The political order was completely collapsing.
And mapping out this timeline is chilling because it shows us it wasn't just one single bad year. It was a slow, agonizing domino effect. Major, bustling cities literally went dark one by one. The very last carved date at the majestic city of Palenque happens in 799 AD. Copan goes dark shortly after in 822 AD. And finally, the massive superpower of Tikal, that bustling city of 60,000 people we talked about, carves its last stone in 869 AD. And then, the written history just stops.
But, and this is absolutely crucial to understand, the story does not end there. Section 5, Exodus and Resilience.
I absolutely love this quote because it really hits the nail on the head. The end was not an apocalypse. It was an exodus. The civilization didn't just magically vanish into thin air. Faced with starvation and a political system of divine kings that had entirely failed to protect them, the common people essentially just voted with their feet. Families packed up whatever they could carry, turned their backs on the grand, imposing stone temples of their ancestors, and just melted back into the green embrace of the jungle.
They left those massive urban centers behind to find a much simpler, far more sustainable way of living out in the forest. And as the humans walked away, nature eagerly took over. The forest began its slow, patient work of reclamation. Seeds started taking root in the cracks of the grand plazas, and the guttural, echoing calls of howler monkeys replaced the chanting of the high priests. The jungle essentially swallowed the cities whole, wrapping those once gleaming white pyramids in the thick, dense green canopy that we recognize today.
And we have got to bust this myth right now. The Maya are not an extinct people. 7 million. There are over 7 million Maya people still walking their ancestral lands today. The divine kings? Gone. The massive temple cities? Reclaimed by the earth. But the people themselves survived the collapse. They are still right there, still speaking those ancient languages and still weaving the incredible, complex patterns of their ancestors.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. These silent, overgrown cities act as a powerful mirror for us today. What do they teach us about the incredibly fragile balance between our own grand human ambitions and the earth that actually sustains us? Because just like the Maya, our human story isn't static. It demands that we bend, that we adapt, and that we find totally new ways forward through whatever environmental storms come our way. Thanks so much for diving into this incredible history with me. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.